Welcome to Frisky Talk 12 with Darin Epsilon. It was so great to catch up with Darin in Miami after hearing him play a fantastic set at the Sounds of the Underground the night before. He really sets himself apart with his hard work and dedication to representing top-quality underground electronic music. His long-lasting and globally renowned radio show Perspectives and record label Perspectives Digital have become widely known and respected, while his personal productions and work as a DJ have established him as one of the most prominent names in progressive. We had an awesome chat about his career, from the album that first got him started to his experiences living in Chicago, LA, and most recently Berlin. We talk about sticking to your sound, having creative freedom, being authentic, and he gives some excellent advice for those who are looking to get their music out there today. Thank you, Darin, for taking the time to share your thoughts. I hope you guys all enjoy Frisky Talk 12 with Darin Epsilon. So how did this happen, coming back here? When you were just here like 2 weeks ago, when did you hear that you were going to be coming back?
That's a good question, actually. So the promoter, Joseph Musgrave, invited me to come back. He heard my set at Do Not Sit, and he was really impressed, I guess. So he said that the music that I was playing would be a perfect fit for his event at Miami Music Week. So yeah, we talked about it some more, and then he was able to fit me in, luckily. And I'm really grateful for that because getting a good show at Miami Music Week is pretty challenging.
Yeah, how many have you done here?
I've honestly lost track because I usually come back year after year, and after a while I just stopped counting because I've been coming back regularly since maybe when I was done with college, which was back in 2006.
You grew up in LA?
No, I grew up in Chicago.
Oh, you grew up, that's right. That's awesome. So did you grow up with house in Chicago then?
Yeah, it's the birthplace of house music, so it's in my veins. I remember listening to the radio, and they would have this kind of music late at night, and I was like, this is so cool. It's so different than everything else, because this was the 90s.
Yeah.
So it was mostly rock and alternative rock on the radio. So, hearing this was really fresh and exciting for me. And I discovered most of the music through listening to Napster, which was it was a thing back then.
Oh, yeah.
And also, I worked at a CD shop, so every time I got paid, I would
cool.
Put my money back into getting new CDs and new records.
What were some of your first CDs that?
I would say probably the compilation that influenced me to, become a DJ was Paul Oakenfold's Transport.
Yeah.
And also the Global Underground series and the Renaissance series and Balance series. So, all of those were really influential. I also really enjoyed the Ministry of Sound compilations. So, I listened to those, and then after a while, I discovered the music on Napster, like I just mentioned before, and then, working in a CD shop, and then I grew my, knowledge of electronic music that way because, growing up as a kid in the U.S., this music was still so underground. So the only way to discover it was through the internet.
Yeah. I love that, though. It was so, hard to find, and when you could find it, it's like a gem. I also started on Oakenfold, and I feel like some people don't want to admit that, but those first Transport and those GUs are just they're amazing.
Yeah, you listen to the music and it still sounds so fresh today. And I think what really attracted me to his style was the music that he was playing was full of imagination, and it really took you on a journey, So you would start in point A and then end in point B, and you would never or end at the same destination as that you started with. So that was what really attracted me to that kind of music, and also just the records that he was blending were so different than everything else. House was established and techno was established, but this new kind of European melodic progressive house and trance was still kind of new.
What was the first show you went to?
Honestly, you're gonna laugh. It was a Paul Oakenfold show, and I remember it was him with Chemical Brothers and Sasha and Digweed.
Oh, wow.
They were all on tour together, and it was, I think I was 17 or 18 at the Allstate Arena in Chicago, and they blew my mind. I was, my whole life changed after that. and also the Moby Area 1 Festival, and Area 2 festivals with like Carl Cox and Digweed played at those, and those were also really influential for me as well.
When did you decide to start DJing?
So I would say that I started DJing when I was 17, and working at the CD shop, I saved up enough money to get my own pair of turntables. So 17 is when I started, and then I got more serious in college, and I didn't become like more professional until maybe 2 years after college. Yeah, when I was like a resident at Vision in Chicago.
Oh, that's awesome. What was that like? How did that start?
Yeah, Vision at that time was like the biggest club in Chicago. It was like a really big honor to be working with them. And so I'm glad that I did it. And then once I moved to LA, I kind of repeated the same steps, and I was able to land a residency with Giant, which is like a big promoter in LA, as well as Insomniac.
Yeah, do you like LA? What do you feel like of the scene out there?
Yeah, I mean, the scene is great. LA is definitely, in my opinion, I think it's the best underground scene in the US.
Yeah?
It's either that or New York, but I always say LA because...
Everyone says New York.
well, because they have the festivals going on throughout the entire year. There isn't really a slow period. You know, like if you go to New York, for example, maybe the winter is slow because it's so cold out. But yeah, I mean, SoCal doesn't really have a slow period.
Are you in Berlin now or still?
I'm living in Berlin, yeah.
Yeah.
I moved since the beginning of last year.
Yeah.
And it's a really different change of pace from the US. I'm really enjoying it, though.
Yeah.
And I find that the people, like, even though they might not be used to this kind of music that I'm playing, they're very open to it. Like, all the shows that I've done in Berlin have been really phenomenal.
Oh, nice. So do you tour around, are you touring around Europe then? Like...
Yeah, I mean, since I moved to Berlin, I've been touring more in Europe, and I had really good shows in Hungary as well as Bosnia, and just a couple weeks ago I was in Denmark. That was a really good show as well, and also the UK. So yeah, I mean, now that I'm in Europe, it's a lot easier to be touring more regularly.
What are some of your favorite places?
Argentina is definitely the best best country
yeah.
to play in, hands down. I also have a really good time in Mexico. Mauritius, believe it or not, is a really, really good scene, as well as Sri Lanka. And I also had a really awesome show in Goa, India.
Nice, that's cool. Well, that's a very diverse set of places. That's cool. What do you think is what to you makes it the best, that you enjoy it the most?
I would just say the response from the audience and how much they're into it and how much energy they give out. It varies from city to city, but these are the places that are consistently always my favorites. Yeah, and they're really educated. If I play a song, they might know what it is, and they follow my production work and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah,
that's cool. What's your favorite type of venue? Do you like playing the big? Does it matter the small, intimate places or the big festival?
I think that. I enjoy playing the small spaces as well as the large spaces. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about how the people are responding, because I've played really big shows before where people were kind of zoning out. So I had more satisfying shows in a smaller space. So, it really depends on the audience. But I feel like for me, I always have more fun at the open air festivals just because they're a little less common. You can have an event at a nightclub every week, but an open air festival is harder to plan and it's more special, I feel. So, I tend to prefer playing outdoors.
I really love that you've stuck with your style. Have you ever felt like pressure to change? Have you ever,
Yeah, absolutely. I've had many moments in my career where I could have sold out or gone the commercial route and probably been a lot more successful doing it. But I always kind of stuck to my roots because, I always feel that, if you're not making the music that you really feel deep inside, then it's like, what's the point? Like, I might as well not even be a musician. My sound these days is a lot different than when I started, but it's still kind of consistent. It's been consistent throughout the years. I've been doing this for like over 10 years. So, the music that I make and I play is like very melodic and harmonious. And, it has that really atmospheric quality to it. So that has never changed. Even though maybe the styles have changed a little bit, there's always that consistent thread throughout my music.
Would you always call it progressive, and how would you define that?
That's very tricky because there isn't like just one definition of progressive house. So, in my opinion, like I feel like progressive house is, that specific sound from the UK that was inspired by Sasha and Digweed. And, it's got like a very atmospheric and imaginative quality to it. And, the music is very melodic and harmonious. So that's what I consider progressive house. Not like what Hardwell makes or plays, and then not what like Above and Beyond play. That's not progressive in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, that's a whole other subject. But I know there's a lot of DJs that started calling themselves techno that would play what I would consider progressive house.
For me, I don't really think in genres.
Yeah.
It's just good music or bad music. So, if it's good, then I'll play it, and it doesn't really matter what genre it is. And, if you listen to a set of mine, like a 3-hour set, for example, you'll probably hear like 4 different kinds of music. It could be like progressive house, deep house, tech house, or techno. And, I feel like the real role of a DJ is to pick and choose the tracks that will work together into a cohesive set. It's like maybe a little too boring to play the same style of music for the entire set. So I like to kind of mix it up and, create like different moods and feelings through my records.
So when did you start writing? When you start producing?
That's hard to say because I actually wrote my first track when I was 14.
Oh my gosh.
And I was attending this class in high school that was teaching MIDI and music production.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So I'm really actually very fortunate that we had this class, because if we didn't, then I might not even be doing what I'm doing. So it was having this really early exposure to this technology that kind of got me really interested in it. So, I wrote my first track when I was 14, and then I was producing on and off throughout school because I was so busy. And then I released my first actual remix when I was a senior in college. So I was like around 22.
Who was that for?
It was for progressivehouse.com.
Oh, okay.
Which is a website that's no longer around. But some of your listeners might remember this website. And it was for their record label. And if I remember correctly, it was for Compound Bass was the name of the artist. That was my first ever remix. And since then, I've been steadily releasing music for over 10 years.
Do you have a favorite?
No, I don't.
So when did you decide to start a label?
I started my Perspectives radio show in 2006, I want to say. And
so how soon was that? When were you a senior in college?
It was like right after I finished school.
Wow. Okay.
Because I had a college radio show while I was attending university, and after I graduated, I kind of missed not being able to have a radio show. So that's when I started a new one.
Was it like house and stuff that did you get to?
The first show was actually more along the lines of electro style progressive. And yeah, it was like kind of a mix of that and like the more classic atmospheric kind of progressive house. And so, yeah, it launched in like 2006, and then the label kicked off in 2010, which was, it's the same name, and it's basically an extension of the radio show. So, I started it because I wanted to have more creative freedom and be able to release the music whenever I wanted. And for me, I feel like having this kind of freedom is extremely important for an artist. And, it's also a way for it's also a platform for me to push the artists that I really believe in, because there's so much talent from all around the world.
You don't always release your stuff, obviously on your own label. So how do you choose what's going on perspectives and who you're seeking out other?
I feel like it's also important to work with other labels that you admire and, try and capture their audience, because every label that you sign with has like a different following. So for example, like if I sign with a label in Berlin versus a label in South America or a label in Asia, they all have their own different followers. So, I have my label as a home base, but occasionally I like to release music on other labels that I admire.
What would have been some of the challenges of running the label?
Well, definitely the biggest challenge is keeping it consistent. Because, sometimes you might have slow periods where you're not getting so many good demos. The label gets like maybe, 100 demos a week, but only like 1% of it is actually good. So,
oh my gosh. So what's that process like for you? You just constantly listen? Do you set aside time to like listen to tracks, or?
Yeah, I always set aside time. I listen to every single demo that gets sent through. And the number of actual signings is really low, but I always sign the tracks that I really feel very emotionally involved with, like the tracks that I really believe will have an impact on the dance floor.
Nice. So you feel a lot of that it's dance floor tracks, like you stick with that style of...
I do tend to stick with the tracks that I feel have like more marketable appeal to it, versus the ones that are more experimental.
Who are some of your favorite like artists that you've discovered, or somebody that you think is...
Just recently Paul Cardos won my remix contest, and he's releasing some amazing music. I can't believe this guy hasn't blown up already, but he's this young producer from Hungary. And also Camilo San Clemente, who is doing really well now, but actually when I first signed him like 4 or 5 years ago, he wasn't so well known. And then, we have other success stories, like I've been signing a lot of music by Antrim and Cassis Terrell. So I always like to push the artists that I think are hardworking and deserve the extra, push.
What do you suggest if somebody was trying to get on your label?
I would say that you should listen to our catalog and, see if your music fits what we're looking for. Don't send any track that you make, send the best ones that you can possibly make. And, also make sure that, the style actually fits the label, because, we're still getting a lot of demos that are, bordering on trance or commercial EDM. And it's pretty obvious when you know that people are just kind of spraying their demos everywhere. And, they're not actually serious. So, make sure whenever you email any label that, you know a little bit about their history and, what kind of sound they're going for, and try and build like a personal rapport with the label manager or A&R.
Are you finding it easier or harder to find quality tracks?
I think it's great that the technology has really opened it up. So it's a more level playing field, because back when I was just starting to produce, only people with like really expensive hardware could afford to, be able to produce. So now it's a level playing field, and anyone with talent and a computer can basically make great music. So I think that's really great. But then at the same time, the problem is that, we have this flood of like producers submitting music, and a lot of it is not good. There's no quality filter now. So, there's still really good music being sent. It's just that it's a lot harder to find because the market is so oversaturated with producers. So it's harder to find the ones that really stand out.
Yeah. What about DJs? Like, you've had such a successful career. Like, what would you advise for somebody who is starting up now?
I would say these days it's really challenging to be a DJ. I think if you really want to reach the highest levels of success, then you really need to start thinking about releasing your own music, and networking as best as you can in whichever city that you're in. It's really important that you build a strong, local support, and then you expand outwards. A lot of people have this notion like, you make music and then people will, book you in other countries and stuff like that. But I mean, really, it's a hard sell if you don't have a history. So, the best thing that you can do for yourself is to play as many shows as you can locally, and then, you can, prove to other promoters that, that what you're doing behind the decks. And then that way, you're always expanding further and further every year.
That's great advice. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about touring? Like, are you ever burnt out from it? Do you enjoy it still as much as you ever have?
Yeah, the traveling is honestly my favorite part.
Is it? That's cool.
Yeah, I love meeting new people. I love seeing new places and playing for, new audiences. There is like a lot of stress that goes behind it. Like, for example, I just have this situation now where, the flights are being booked very last minute, and, I'm not sure if I would get to the show on time. So, there is like that, that element where it can be very stressful for your well-being. But other than that, I would say that the traveling part is personally my favorite part of being a DJ.
Oh, that's cool. Did you used to travel around with a bunch of records? or even once you got into the digital age?
Yeah, luckily, I started DJing with vinyl, but luckily I never, had to travel with vinyl, because by the time I was like a touring artist or, somebody that was like actually active as a DJ, then we had already moved on to CDs, and CDs were a lot more, easy to move around. Right? Yeah. So I'm really glad that I'm not one of those DJs that had to like carry around a whole crate of vinyl.
Do you have like a dream destination that you'd want to play at?
I still haven't played Thailand or much of Asia, actually. I haven't played Japan or, much of Southeast Asia, which would be a lot of fun, I think. And then also, I haven't really played Eastern Europe so much, which I heard is really good for this kind of music. And then Brazil, I wish I had more shows in, as well as other parts of South America.
What's your normal schedule like? Like, when are you writing? When are you producing? When are you...
I try and put aside time for, everything that I do. Like, because I wear different hats on different days of the week. So, for example, one day I might be, like, putting on my label owner hat. Another day I might be doing my radio show. So I'll, have to work on my, putting together the radio show and doing the talk breaks and all that. And then another day I'm going to be working on my like DJing and my performances. And then, then I have to work on production as well. So I always try and like divide my time evenly.
So what else is coming up that you're excited about?
I have a new EP coming out with a remix by Sébastien Léger, which I'm really excited about because Sébastien is like this big respected artist that I've been following for many years. And also I have a lot of new music coming out on my own label as well as other labels as well. And I'll be doing shows, like I said, in Argentina, Mexico, Berlin, and Budapest, as well as, we're possibly talking about doing an Asia tour again. So there's a lot to look forward to.
Do you have any other goals you feel you haven't accomplished yet?
There's still a lot of labels that I would love to work with. There's a lot of venues that I haven't played that I would love to be able to perform in. And, I always feel like we're on this scale and, everyone's always kind of working towards something. So, there's still a lot of stuff I haven't accomplished yet that I would really like to in the next year or two.
What's most important to you in your life and career?
I think the most important thing is just to be authentic and, put out the music that you feel and you believe in. A lot of people, they get maybe swept up in the hype or the sound that's popular at the moment, and then they at the end of the day, like, they're not being true to themselves, and then that sound might die away within like the next year, and then they're kind of back to square one.
Yeah, that's great advice. What's your favorite thing about being in the electronic music industry?
Yeah, I enjoy being a musician, and I think I'm really blessed to be able to do what I really like to do. A lot of people, it wasn't actually that long ago that I was working a job that I really didn't like. So, for me, I'm very happy and fortunate that I get to be able to do what I really have passion for. So I think, for me, that's the most important thing in life, is to feel comfortable.
Is there anything else that you want to share with people?
Yeah, it was great talking with you. Thanks for having me. And if you guys want to keep in touch, then you can follow me on facebook.com/Darin Epsilon official or @Darin Epsilon on Twitter. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have, or if you just want to chat and say hi or what's up, then I'd love to be able to be in touch.